I'm back. I am back. Alrighty. Let's see what happens if I do this. Oh. Guess I can't go landscape mode for you guys. Can't go landscape. Alright. Audio is working. Just had a little test there. Visual is working. So we'll get going in just a minute here. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining yet again on another edition of Locker Room Talk Live. We are here at the lovely LRT Studios. Got a nice close-up of me tonight, up close and personal, unfortunately for some of you. So let me check the time here. Yeah, so we're a little after 7. I'll give it a couple more minutes. I got on right at 7, so I want some people to get the notification, hop in and join. But while we wait, I might as well tell you guys all about our social media. You know, as you know, we have a Facebook. That's how you're watching this right now. We have Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. Be sure to follow us on all those platforms. Check out our video content. We post new stuff every day. Different stuff across all platforms. So make sure you're following us across the board so you don't miss anything. Make sure you get all the great content that we're putting out there. Also, check out our site, lockerroomtalk.com. You obviously know that, but if not, there's going to be a link in the description of this video as soon as it publishes to our page on Facebook. There will be a link that takes you directly to our site. Go on there, check out the thousands of college coach ratings that we have, the blog with thousands of coach Q&As. Everything that they look for in a recruit is answered on our blog. For the ratings, they're anonymous from current and former student athletes, college student athletes, so you get firsthand accounts of what it's like to play for these certain coaches at these different schools. Everything from Division I to Division II, III, junior colleges, NAIA, so make sure you check it all out. Help find the coach for you. Obviously, the recruiting process is long, it's stressful, it's intimidating, so we're here to make it a lot easier for you. Go to lockerroomtalk.com. Everything is totally free. And help make the recruiting process a lot more honest and a lot easier for yourself. So the reason I'm here tonight to talk to you all is to tell you about life as an Ivy League student athlete. We've talked about Division III athletes, Division I. We talked about the junior college or the post-grad route. So tonight we're here to talk about Ivy League, what it entails, sort of how it's different than other divisions, kind of. There are some small differences, and what's life like once you get on campus there. So Ivy League there's 8 schools, and as I'm sure you know, they're 8 of the best academic schools in the country. They pride themselves on academic excellence. They're located in the northeast region of the United States. The 8 schools are Yale, Harvard, Princeton, Dartmouth, UPenn, University of Pennsylvania, Cornell, Brown, and Columbia. And like I said, those are considered some of, if not the best academic colleges in the country. They have very storied histories. They've been around for a long time. The name almost speaks for themselves at this point. And so with that, they have different standards and different practices when it comes to all things, including athletics. So just a couple quick facts. They offer 16 men's and women's sports, and some sports compete in members of other leagues, but an Ivy League champion is crowned at the end of each year. So, for example, in hockey, there are 6 Ivy League schools that have a hockey team, and they actually compete in the ECAC conference. But at the end of each year, a Ivy League champion is crowned based on the record that the Ivy League schools have against one another. And a cool little fact that I found here is on average, each of the 8 Ivy League schools are in the top 20 for number of sports offered for men and women among Division I schools. So because they have such high endowments, such high donations from their alums, that they are able to offer a lot of sports for both men and women, like I said. On average, each Ivy League school has more than 35 varsity teams. So you do the math, 35 teams, however many athletes on each team. All these Ivy League schools do have a lot of student athletes. And so now to kind of get into the difference between Ivy League and other Division I schools. So if Ivy League does compete, NCAA Division I, but in a way it's almost like Division I AA. The biggest difference being that they have no athletic scholarships. So all recruits and all athletes are technically preferred walk-ons as one way to look at them, because there are no athletic scholarships. There's nothing binding them to a team. And so because Ivy League schools don't offer these athletic scholarships, athletes can't sign or don't sign a national letter of intent to go play at the school, because those are tied directly to athletic scholarships. So one way that, not to get around this, but what Ivy League schools do instead of an NLI, National Letter of Intent, is something called a likely letter. So if you're getting recruited by an Ivy League school, multiple schools, and a coach really wants you and you want to go there, what happens is a coach will give you a verbal offer, and then you give a verbal commit, and then the school can send you a likely letter. And this is common in Ivy Leagues, like I'm saying, and they basically send these likely letters out to applicants before the official admission verdicts. It basically saying like, okay, we plan on accepting you. We can't accept you officially yet, but you will be accepted to the school. It's popular in athletics with Ivy Leagues because, like I said, it's a disadvantage for Ivy League schools not being able to have athletes sign national letters of intent. So to kind of help them compete with other Division I schools where that is NLIs are offered, they send out these likely letters to student athletes that basically tell them, okay, you can put these other schools on the back burner. You're going to get accepted here once the date rolls around. And so admissions review the student athlete's application differently at Ivy League schools, and it's different for each school and each sports. Like I said, these schools pride themselves on academic excellence, so that's the main thing that they look at when you apply to these schools. You really are a student first, athlete second. That's both in the recruiting process and during your time at the school. These schools won't let a student's academic experience suffer at the cost of anything, especially at the hands of athletics. They want to make sure that everyone who goes to their school gets the prestigious and the elite academic experience that is promised to them and that these schools became famous and are known for. So they look at, depending on the school, depending on the sport, they look at all applicants and applications differently. One kind of common way that football teams or football players are recruited is a band system. So basically, there's 4 bands, and based on a applicant's and a recruit's grades, SAT scores, that each recruit is placed in one of 4 bands. So let's say band 1, the first band contains student athletes, recruits with the best high school academic testing, best high school GPA. Second band is the second best in terms of high school test grades, GPA, standardized test scores. Third, and then fourth being the lowest. And so if you're placed in one of those bands, a lot of times coaches will say, okay, I can accept 10 first banders, 9 second banders, 6 third banders, and 2 fourth banders in this recruiting class. So every school is different in terms of the numbers that they allow, but depending on where you fall in terms of academics, you might have a smaller chance of getting into the school, because if you fall into those third or fourth bands, a coach has limited options. They can't really let anyone whose academics will suffer into these Ivy League schools, because like I've stressed, these schools pride themselves on academics, and they won't let just anybody in, especially compared to other NCAA Division I schools. Those schools have lower required GPAs to maintain eligibility. They have lower requirements to get into the schools. These schools kind of hold themselves to a higher standard. Another difference between the Ivy Leagues and the rest of NCAA Division I, and also at any point, if you guys have a question, a comment, please ask away in the comment section. I will answer everyone's question. I will get to you. If you have any experiences of your own, whether you are a current Ivy League athlete, former, have friends that played an Ivy League team, please throw it in there. The more information for everyone, the better. Actually, if you go to our blog on our site, we do have interviews with former Ivy League student athletes. We have, off the top of my head, I know we have a Yale football player, Princeton field hockey player, a couple coaches. So make sure you go check that out. Get these firsthand accounts, these interviews from student athletes that went through the strict Ivy League recruiting process, a strict Ivy League student athlete experience. So make sure you check that out. So then moving on, another way that they differ themselves from other NCAA Division I schools is redshirting. As we've said in other Facebook Lives as we've written about on our blog, redshirting is when you take a year off from competing in athletics and maintain that year of eligibility so you could use it on the back end of your college career. That is not offered in the Ivy League. They're very strict against redshirting. The basic rule of thumb in the Ivy League is if you're enrolled in the school, you lose that year of eligibility. You can't, if you're injured, they might make a few exceptions. It's very strict, very hard to make exceptions. I know there are stories of student athletes that are injured that will unenroll from the school for a semester, for a year, just so they could get that, so they don't lose that year of eligibility. Because if you are enrolled in classes or taking classes at an Ivy League school, you do lose that year of athletics, even if you aren't competing. So that is a major difference, and it's cause of some controversy. If you look online, would be some articles of some people talking out against that because some kids aren't ready to play right away their freshman year, or if you're injured one year, it's kind of unfair to not be able to get that year of eligibility back, versus if that happened to you at another NCAA Division I school, you would be able to redshirt and get that year back. But, it's just all part of the process. It's all the pros and cons of going to an Ivy League school. Sometimes their athletic regulations and athletic rules are a little strict, a little, I don't want to say unfair at times, but a little less lenient than other NCAA schools. But at the same time, you're going to these Ivy League schools, getting this, an education that you can't beat, and it is something that will set you up really for the rest of your life, obviously, in the professional career going on after college. So it is some gives and takes that you do have to consider. So since there are these main differences between Ivy League schools and other Division I schools, a lot of times you'll see the Ivies play teams in the Patriot League for their non-league games, because the Patriot League, they are schools that also have very high academic standards. They don't offer athletic scholarships, but they do allow redshirting. That is one way that they do differ. But because they are somewhat on a level playing field, they do tend to compete against one another a lot in non-league games, because, a football team like Harvard or Yale just simply will be most likely unable to compete with the powerhouses like an Alabama or an LSU, simply because they're just at a disadvantage with the academic standards that the school places on the coaches, on the athletic department. So that's why they will play a lot more teams that are evenly matched. And so a few other fun facts. Ivy Leagues, they are very rich in sports tradition. They're one of the oldest conferences in the NCAA. If you look back at like football national championships, you'll see Princeton and Yale have won a bunch of national championships. This was a long time ago, obviously, but it just goes to show the tradition, the history that does go into these programs. So there is a lot of pride putting on those uniforms, wearing those colors and representing these schools. One of the biggest games in not only college football, but college sports every year is Harvard versus Yale football. It's dubbed the game, quite simply because it is, if you go to one of these schools, it's the biggest athletic event of the year. Even if you don't go one of these schools, you follow it every year. You see who's winning. You see who's got the upper hand. And it's just two schools that obviously they're could widely be regarded the two best academic schools in the country, so they have a natural rivalry in that sense. So the game every year is highly competitive. We actually, like I said, we have an interview with a former Yale football player on our site. We've had multiple interns that played Yale football and other athletic. We had a few Yale ice hockey players. So they always talk about, how important that game means, how important that game is to them. And then continue on with football, they compete in the FCS rather than the FBS, so they're not eligible for the college football playoff, which I'm sure everyone's seen on ESPN, the controversy, the debate going on with the college football playoff standings. They compete in the FCS, which is with all the other smaller Division I schools, like I said at the beginning, kind of like Division I AA. But something interesting about the Ivy League is none of the Ivy League football teams have actually participated in the postseason since the 1950s, and that's because that they worry that since how college football works is that the playoffs stretch out for a long period of time. Sometimes they don't end until the end of December. They worry that student athletes being in season that long, it will hinder their academic performance, experience. So it's almost like a tradition, I guess you could call it, that the teams that get invited to the FCS playoffs out of the Ivy League, they do decline the invitation. So they don't participate in postseason play. And so, yeah, I know we've gotten some people coming in and out. If you do have any questions, please feel free to let me know now in the comments section. Again, we talked all about the Ivy League today. They are 8 of the most elite colleges in the country in terms of academics. They have rich and storied histories that they really speak for themselves. Obviously the names carry a lot of weight, especially schools like Harvard, Yale, Princeton. All of them do. They're 8 of the best schools in the country, and they do differ from other NCAA Division I schools, even though they do compete in Division I. I hope tonight you kind of learned about some of these differences. We have blogs up about it on our site. We have interviews with student athletes that played in the Ivy League on our site. Be sure to check those out. If you have any questions after the fact, just write them in the comments. We will get to them. There will be a link posted directly in the description of this video. I'll take you directly to our site. Let's see if we got anything else, Rule in the NCAA that financial aid isn't available to anyone less than a 1.6, so that's obviously standard with the Ivy League. So, that's about it. Another, just briefly running through again, obviously they have the 4-band system where you're put into, depending on your high school academic GPA and test scores, you're put into 4 different bands. This is common in Ivy League football. Top band is the recruits with the top scores, top GPAs. 4th band is the one with the lowest. Depending on which band you fall in, a coach can only take a certain amount of first banders, second banders, 3rd and 4th. So obviously, the higher your test scores, higher your GPA, the better of a chance you'll have because coaches can take more recruits from those top bands. They don't have any national letter of intent because they don't offer athletic scholarships. Their scholarships are financial-based, need-based. So they have what they call likely letters, where if a coach gives a verbal offer to a student athlete and the student athlete verbally commits it, the school can send them a likely letter, him or her, a likely letter that basically says, okay, you're going to get accepted to the school when the official admissions date comes around. And yeah, again, if you have any questions, please throw them in there now so I could get to them here. If not, I will get to anyone's comments or questions that are left after the fact. Thank you again for joining. I'll be back here again in the same spot 2 weeks from now, November 30th. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I won't see you till after then, so thank you for have a happy Thanksgiving from me, everyone at Locker Room Talk. We're certainly thankful for everyone watching this, all the recruits that are going to be watching this and going on our site. Check us out on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, obviously, is right here, YouTube. Check out our site. We have I wish. We have thousands of college coach ratings. We They're anonymous from student athletes across the country, all divisions. Learn about these college coaches. Learn about these Ivy League coaches. You know, who has the best ratings out of the Ivy League schools? Is it Princeton? Is it UPenn? Is it Dartmouth? Go onto our site, check it out, see which coach is a right fit for you, which program is a right fit for you. And again, thanks for joining. I'll see you all in 2 weeks, and I'll talk to you then. All right.